The Democratic Alliance has launched a court application to challenge President Cyril Ramaphosa's decision to retain ministers Malusi, Gigaba and Bathabile, Dlamini. In the papers filed today, the DA argues that the president's decision is irrational because both ministers have been found to have lied under oath in separate court cases. ENCA's Alden Sampier is following that story and he joins me now. Has the DA given the president any ultimatum?
Well, certainly. It would seem that what the DA is really doing is trying to force the president's hand in trying to reshuffle his cabinet and get at least those two ministers out of the cabinet. And this is quite an interesting case, also taking into consideration, as we know, as per the Constitution, that it is the president's prerogative who's in the cabinet and who's out of the cabinet. And we'll have to wait and see exactly how the court will deal with this particular matter, because one thing that we must take into consideration as well is that when the president reshuffles a cabinet, there's a lot of political play that takes place in the background that we may not be aware of. And if you look at these two characters, Bathabile Dlamini being the president of the ANC Women's League and Malusi Gigaba, who back in 2012 after that Mangaung conference was one of the highest ranking NEC officials in terms of the numbers that he secured. So certainly these are people who still have a constituency within the ANC, and one then wonders whether that is one element at least that President Cyril Ramaphosa at the time of reshuffling his cabinet took into consideration and and on the other hand, shunned these court rulings, because even before the last constitutional court ruling, there was a constitutional court judgment back in 2017 already that stated that Bathabile Dlamini should be held accountable for the role that she played. This is now the one before the inquiry took place. And what happened? Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa still decided to keep these two characters within his cabinet.
But in the papers that they filed today, do they speak directly to the issue of the president's prerogative to appoint cabinet ministers? And what are they asking the court to get around that particular question? Well,
they actually speak about this is an issue that the court will have to deal with. The court cannot make the argument that this is not within the jurisdiction, also taking into consideration that you're dealing with an executive, and of course the executive, when you speak about the executive, you speak about the constitution of the country as well. And it would be really interesting to see how are they able to force the court to really work around this situation, as you put it, because also taking into consideration what I said earlier on, that it is the president's prerogative. And here's the other thing that the DA is asking in this court papers is that the president has acknowledged that there is this court judgment against Bathabile Dlamini, for instance, and he acknowledges that it is a serious court ruling against, a finding against Bathabile Dlamini. Is the president then waiting for the Hawks first to investigate a case of perjury, for instance, against Bathabile Dlamini before he takes action? They believe that he should be taking action as soon as yesterday already.
Has the presidency said anything?
The presidency hasn't said anything as yet, and it will be really interesting to see how they respond to this paper, because this is not the first time that Cyril Ramaphosa at least is being taken to court on decisions relating to executive decisions. Remember that one of the other court cases that he took over from former President Jacob Zuma was the issue around the cabinet reshuffle, what led to that cabinet reshuffle. And it was in the Supreme Court of Appeal court case that the president said that those meetings, it cannot be revealed exactly what happened in those meetings and how the president came to a final decision about who is in the cabinet and who is not in the cabinet. And this, I think, is another opportunity for opposition parties to try and force the president really to reveal the thought process behind appointing members of his cabinet.
No clarity yet as to when this matter will...
Certainly not. We're still going to wait for responding papers and then heads of arguments before we even get to court.
Okay, so we're going to leave it for now.